we are going to pick up where we left off last time with our MvvM project. However, since we already did the complete coding in class, what I will do is I will go over the pieces that you missed and just kind of go through the code and explain it. So first off, what I'll do is I'll run the application so you can see where we're at. We finished up adding cross-platform capability in our app startup classes, our app delegate, and our main activity. Give this a minute to spin up. Seems to be having a problem connecting to the debugger, so what I'm going to do is stop it and restart it. Behaving a little bit oddly. I'm assuming probably because I'm recording at the same time as chewing up a lot of the processor core. So I'll stop it and I'll just start it from simulator. Still having problems. So cases like this, I guess the best thing to do, there we go. Really slow again. I think it's probably because of QuickTime. So I'll enter in my name and password. I believe we had this done last time. Oh yeah, it's extremely slow. So this brings up the list of courses. So that was the first thing we did, was we changed our list of menu options to be actually a list of courses. I'll show that part, but then when you click on one of those, it takes you to an edit screen. You can change the name of a course, its description, and also number of credits. Very similar to what we did last semester, only this time we're using MvvM and we are binding all the data. So that's the main difference, really. Otherwise, it's essentially it's a very similar concept. However, because of the fact we're binding the data from the database, well, in this case it's just being generated, but we're binding that data to the controls. So that's a critical difference. So to go over the aspects of how we did that. First of all, most of the work we did was in the core project. So we now have a models folder, a view models folder. In our models folder, we have the main menu item, which is the data that we're actually using to populate that menu, that list. My goodness, this is slow. All right, so we have an item name and we have a description. We also have our user, which we already had. In our services, we have the authentication service and the cache service, which we had begun last time. We also have the menu service. So the menu service is what is retrieving that data that populates the list. That is returning a list of main menu items. So I did not change anything with the main menu item to change it from just generic menu items to classes. Other than down here, I changed the actual text of the item, the menu item, and the description. So now instead of it being a list of main menu items like you'd find on MidState's website, they're actually classes. So in the get main menu, we're making a call to our cache service to retrieve the main menu, and if it's null, if we haven't saved it off yet, Then we call this generate menu, which then gens up these fake classes. And then we store it so that it is available for later on. And if it isn't successfully stored, we just write that out in a console write line saying the store failed. And then we return the menu. So that's all there is to that. In the cache service, so the cache service is what's actually doing the work of getting and storing. So in that guy, here's the store. We're using Akavash's blob cache. We're storing it in the secure folder. And in the case of the user, we're storing it as a current user. So this does the work of checking to see what type of object is being stored and then storing it. We also have the get. And then the get menu items is getting the main menu items and returning those. So we have several different flavors of we have a get user and we have a get menu items. So this can be expanded when we do the get. I'm actually passing in a type, and then I'm calling get object, passing that type in. So, and so the that's the generic get. And then we have the get user and we have the get menu item. So the generic get is probably the best approach to use when you want to not have like class-specific knowledge built into your caching. In this case, all you do is you pass in a type, and it does the work of getting it and casting it as that type. However, this can be a little bit tricky to debug and not as straightforward as someone trying to maintain it, so we added the get user and the get menu items, which is a little bit more straightforward and easy to understand. Then in our view models, so generally what we tried to do was set up one view model for each one of the views, because that's generally the way MvvM is architected, is to have that one-to-one relationship that exists between view models and views. So we have the class view model. So this is the guy that that last screen that I showed. So I log in, and then I tap on immediate mobile apps, and that takes you to this screen. So this is the class view screen. So if I go up into the MvvM project, Xamarin project, and I go into views, there's a class page.xaml, and that class page.xaml aligns with the class view model. So again, it's a naming convention that Xamarin uses, or actually I should say MvvM uses, to match up the view with the view model. So in the class view model, we pass in a menu item, and then we have a name and description and number of credits. So those are all bound. So these are this credits is a private property, but it has a public accessor here. So in the public accessor, when we do the get, we're just returning the private property, whatever that happens to be. And then in the setter, we're setting the private property, but then we're also calling these raised property changed events. So the raised property changed event is what MvvM uses to inform the view that a property in the view model changed. It kind of publishes it or broadcasts it, and then the subscriber is the view. It picks up that event and says, oh, hey, this value changed, we have to update the view. So the reason why we have two different raised property changed, and by the way, the name of operator just simply takes the word credits, that's the property, and it converts it into a string. So it's basically like wrapping credits in quotes. It is less error prone than if you try to type in a string literal. So that's why we're using it. That's just a nice little syntactical tidbit that you can use that just ensures that you have the correct string. So instead of, potentially fat fingering, the word, like for example, display credits, like you might get a case wrong or something like that, and that would not be picked up by the compiler because it's a string literal. In this case, we're using the name of, and that will ensure that you actually have the name of the property. But anyway, we call the raise property event on this and on display credits, and the reason why we do that is because display credits is simply taking the credits and converting it into a string. And so when we change the credits, we not only want to make sure that we inform the UI that the credit value changed, but also the display credits, because the display credits is what is actually being displayed in the UI. Just some garbage stuff there. So in the prepare, the prepare method of the view model allows the view that's calling it, or the view model that's calling it, to pass in a parameter, in this case the main menu item, and then you can use that parameter in the view model that's being called to set properties and that kind of thing. All right. So again, we're setting our properties, and we're calling this time we're calling them raise all properties changed, which means that every one of the properties in the view model needs to be refreshed in the view. Okay, so that's what we're doing there, and what is calling this class view model is the main view model. And the way that's working is we have a command defined, an MvvX command, which is kind of like a click event handler, only it's the MvvM version of it. It's an MvvX command object. And up here is the actual implementation of it. So this is the interface of an MvvX command, and this is the implementation. It's a private property. And then this is saying what is being passed in as a parameter. What's being passed in as a main menu item, and this is the name of the actual command. So this guy is being bound, this item click command, just like a property on a data object can be bound, so can a command object. So this guy, this item click command, or actually the select command I should say, is bound. So if I look at our XAML, up here in our list view, you'll see the selected item has a binding to selected item. All right, so that binding then takes place back here in these selected items. Okay, so the selected item is bound in that list view. So when you select an item in the list, the selected item gets changed. Okay, and when it happens, so like this set property, what it does is it checks to see, make sure the selected item is not null. If it is not null, it calls the select command.execute, which is up here. And then the select command.execute, first thing it does is the select command will do the call to the get to get the select command. And the select command is really just returning the item clicked command. It's a little bit confusing, I know, but the item click command, then it checks to see if that is null. That's what this operator means, a double question mark operator. Basically is saying, is it null? It's like an if null check. If it is null, it news it up. All right, so news up a new MvvX command, which is the command handler, having the type of a main menu item, and then it's an async function. Item in this case, in this lambda represents the main menu item. So then it calls the navigation service navigate to the class view model, passing in the main menu item, which is this item right here. So when you click on a list view item, this item guy is going to be passed in as a main menu item, and then it's the navigation service is going to call navigate to the class view model, passing in that main menu item. And in the class view model, that's when this prepare gets called, and it's taking that main menu item parameter that you passed in from the main view model, and it's setting those properties and calling the raise properties changed. So it's a little bit, it seems kind of convoluted, maybe a little confusing, but it ensures that everything is driven through the data and the view model, as opposed to being UI having to have knowledge of, okay, I'm going to get this main menu item. So the UI is if you don't use the inversion of control approach like we're doing here, and you drive everything with the data, then the UI has to have knowledge of what data is being passed to it, and it tightly couples the UI to the data, which makes it less maintainable going forward if you ever have changes and stuff, because the UI actually has to have knowledge of data access layer stuff. So this decouples all that. Seems a little bit convoluted, but it works pretty well. And then once you get used to it, you just kind of gradually become accustomed to using it that way. So when the main menu view model gets called from the login view model, and the selection is changed, so first thing that happens is those menu items are bound in the initialize. It sets the menu service to get the main menu and the menu items, and then the menu items, of course, this is kind of by way of review, I think, because I think we'd covered this before, but the menu items are bound to the item source in the page. So if we go back to the page, let's see, item source, here it is, binding to menu items. So that's being bound, the selected item is bound, which then triggers our command handler to issue the command to navigate to the next screen. So everything else is pretty self-explanatory in here. I will have this code pushed up so you can see it and go ahead and go through it. What we had to do, I don't know if we covered this in class before or not. To get Android to work, we had to convert what is normally the main activity. We have to change the name of it to root activity. And then very similarly to what we did with iOS, we had to create this, instead of deriving it from the Xamarin Forms global app stuff, we did this instead, MvvX Forms app compat activity, and we passed in the setup object. And basically what this setup object does is just like we did in iOS, it maps the new core app, which is in our core project. It maps that to the Xamarin Forms app. So it's saying basically, instead of using the Xamarin Forms app, use the MvvM project app instead, and that will be our new app to start. And then the other thing that we had to add in our startup for our cores app class to hook the navigation in is we were originally calling register app start here, but we commented that out, and what we did was we added a custom app start class. So this is like we're kind of inserting this app start as our we're telling the system this is how we're going to start the app. And what this allows us to do is set up our navigation service. So this is an overridden method, this navigate to first view model, and in here we just call navigation service.navigate to the login view model, and in that way we have it basically hooks up the navigation service for us. We do not need to register the navigation service, it's a built-in framework class, but we do need to do this piece in order to get multi-page navigation set up. All right, so that's that. Going back to the app class, this is where we register all of our types. So we also, in addition to the ones we'd already registered, we register the cache service, and we also register the menu service, so that those are available to be injected into the constructors when we need them. So in the case of the main view model, in our constructor, we are injecting, that's our original bogus interface, our iOutput, but we're also injecting the iMenu service and the iMvvX navigation service. and we have a private property navigation service that was set to the nav service, and the same thing with the menu service. And then we're just able to use call methods on these interfaces because we injected them into our class's constructor. I think that covers everything that we added in class. Kind of a quick overview, but it's already been coded, so went over it a little bit quick. It's a lot faster to do once you've already got the finished code in front of you. So again, I guess as kind of a broad stroke overview, with MvvM, it's breaking down the individual components of an application into the model. In this case, our models consist of the main menu item and the user. So those models are used at various times in the app. The user is a model that we use to authenticate and log in the user. And the main menu item is what displays in that list. Beyond that, we do not really have any objects defined other than in our class view model. So that's one of the ways you can use view models, is to be like an aggregator of data that you retrieve from models. So in our class view model, which is the one that we're using to edit the class, we kind of take the main menu item and we just kind of squirrel that away as a variable. And then out of that, we take the name description, but then we add credits, which does not exist on that main menu item because it's a menu item, so it doesn't really need any knowledge of specific things to different types of objects. So by doing it this way, the main menu item can have menu items for other things other than classes. It could have a list of students. It could have a list of like mid-state, the original menu items that we use. It can have any number of different things. It doesn't have to be tied to a class. But if we add the credits into that main menu item, then all of a sudden it becomes more of a class menu item. So this way we have a main menu item, which is the model that we get. And then we add to it our credits, and we'll add other stuff along with that in addition to credits. But that is, this is a case where the view model is kind of an aggregator of data. But you always use the view model to bind to the view, and the model is coupled to the database, which is the way you want it. You want the data to be with the data, and the view model is like the go-between guy that handles moving the data from the model into the view, and that's why it's a view model. So I believe that's about it. So starting from the bottom, we have the database. That moves into the models. The models are retrieved by the service layer. The service layers are injected into the view models and the constructors. And then the view models are bound, data bound to the views. So that's essentially an overview of it. This code, actually, I think I already did push this up to Blackboard, so it is out there, available to be downloaded in Blackboard. We are using Git as our means of actually keeping, or actually for our first assignments, which is posted out there. So the first assignment, I'll go over that quickly. So the first assignment is in GitHub, and the description or the requirements for the assignment are actually in a README file. So here it is. It's my S. Stilson MST assignment 1. We have 7 branches created, which I think everyone had an opportunity, except for Christine. So everyone branched off of the master branch out here. My branch contains, well, actually, I should say master branch and my branch contain the startup code for the project. So if I go back to assignment 1, this is the README, and in the README It's right out here on the GitHub main page, has the actual requirements for the project as opposed to having a PDF file in Blackboard. You can just go through the requirements here in the README file. And in order to be able to submit the assignment, what you will need to do is branch off of master and create your own branch. I requested that everyone use the approach or nomenclature of your first initial, last name, underscore assignment 1. So going forward, that's what we'll do with assignments. We'll do first initial, last name, underscore assignment number, whatever it happens to be. So to do this using a non-UI, which is the way we did it in class, get terminal come up, there we go. All right, so pwd, present working directory. Okay, so I am in the assignment 1 folder right now. What I suggested to everyone in class is that they use this folder structure where when you log into the Mac, by default it takes you into users and then your username, and then you do a, once you're in your username folder, CD takes you to a different folder, ... takes you up one level in the directories. Okay, so pwd shows that I'm in the source folder, so I'll go up one more. Okay, so this is where you would be logged in at, is your user directory. So then when you want to, what you'll want to do is create a source folder under that. So you do a mkdir source. I already have one, so I'm not going to commit that. Not mkdir. Mkdir source. And then that'll create the source directory. Once you have the source directory created, you cd into it. And then you do another mkdir repos, like that. That will create the repos folder. You cd into it. And then finally you do the last one. Oh yeah, if you want to see the listing, what's in the directory, do ls space -l. That'll show you what's in there. You can see I have an assignment 1 folder, so you do another mkdir, you won't have that folder. So you do an mkdir assignment 1 and create that. Then finally, you'd cd into assignment 1, and then you would do a git init, just like that. And you do a git init that initializes that folder as a git directory. Okay, once you've done the git init, then you do a git clone, and then you would pull down the contents of the master of MSTC assignment 1 by going to the MSTC assignment 1 main page where the README is located. You can just click on the link that'll take you there, and then you click on this clone or download button, and you click on this little copy, and then you go back to where you are here in your assignment 1 folder, and you type the git clone space, paste in that URL and hit enter, and then that will bring down all the contents of master onto into that directory. Once it has brought everything down, you want to cd one more time, because it will create the assignment 1 folder. Oops. Maybe I should list this here on there. Oh, okay. It creates this MSTC, I'm sorry, MSTC hyphen assignment. So then you want to do cd, oops, MSTC tab will finish the statement, and then if you do a git, once you've already cloned it, so you can do a git status. And this shows everything that's changed. So you see there's some modifications that were made. In my case, I modified some stuff. In your case, you won't see this until you start making changes. So anytime you do a git status, it will show you what branch you are on. So you'll start off on master. So you don't want to be working in master, you want to be working in your own branch. So once you've got everything pulled down with that initial git clone, you want to do a git branch, git checkout -b. So that does a checkout, creates a new branch, and then give it your, your name. Like I showed you that naming convention, first letter, last name, underscore assignment 1. After the -b there, you want to type that, and then hit enter. That will create a new branch for you locally. So you'll have the branch locally, and before you do anything else, you want to do a git push -u origin, and then whatever branch, whatever the name was you give to your branch, and hit enter. That will push everything from your local new branch up to the remote branch and create the remote branch in GitHub, and then everything will be tracked. So all the changes you make from there on out will be tracked. So whenever you make changes, you add code, whatever, to the project you want to do, you'll do a git status. It will show you everything that's changed. You do a git add space dot, and then that will add everything that was changed. And then once you've done the git add, you type git commit space -m, and then put some reason for your commit, adding stuff, and quote, hit enter. That will commit it, and then when you're done, as long as the commit worked, which it should, you type git push, and that will push it up to the remote repo, and then you'll have it on the server. So anytime you want to work on it, regardless of where you are, as long as you have an internet connection, you will be able to pull it down, make mods, and using these simple git commands, you can update it. So that's about it. I will finish this recording and publish it, and then it will be available on YouTube.